Hey guys, it's Luca with Learning MTG, and today I want to make a video talking about a book, kind of like a book report. So I read this book. It's called Own a Fraction, Earn a Fortune: The Complete Guide to Co-Investing in Art and Collectibles. So why did I choose to read this book? Well, basically I have this theory. I've talked about it in some other videos, but I think the price of a Magic card, the most expensive Magic cards, is no longer based on, tournament viability. It's not like a Jace is worth $100 because I can put it in my deck, whether it's standard, modern, legacies, or EDH even. It's now, okay, this beta Birds of Paradise is worth a lot because it's really rare and I want to collect it and I want to grade it. And so I think we're moving into a place where Magic is more of a collectible. It's always kind of theoretically been a collectible, but really, prices were, in my opinion, very based on playability of a card, and now we're moving into this collectability. So, if that theory holds, that we're headed into the future where cards are collectible, then I wanted to figure out, okay, well, what happens in other collectibles? What happens in collectible art? What happens in collectible sports cards? Or collectible watches or comics, right? So I wanted to see, like, where are we headed? What are the kind of the dynamics of a market that's based on collectability? So I chose to read this book. Um, and I'll just talk a little bit about it. I did enjoy the book and I do recommend it. You can find it here on Amazon. Pretty much the main thing I was looking for is covered very early in the book, which talks about the value drivers of collectibles. So these are, what I termed kind of dynamics in some of my other videos. So he groups value drivers into two different categories: intrinsic and extrinsic. I'm not even really sure exactly the difference. I guess intrinsic is like within the scope of that particular market, and extrinsic is like, kind of um, bigger market factors, like what's going on in the global economy, um, how is it being covered in the media, that kind of thing. So I'll talk about intrinsic first, and I'll relate it to Magic cards. So we've got scarcity, rarity, provenance, condition, and history. Okay, so scarcity. Scarcity, as termed in this book, is basically, you know, the difference between supply and demand. Like, is there a lot more demand than there is supply? So you have to always remember that you can't just say, well, there's only 100 copies of, I don't know, Blastoderm, Foil, and Nemesis or whatever. You have to compare it to, well, how many people want a Foil Blastoderm? So you always have to compare the supply to the demand. You can't just look at absolute supply numbers. And so, yeah, scarcity is what what are the cards that more people want them than there are those available. And so, and I think you'll see this in the pricing. Black Lotus is worth a lot. Alpha, Beta, Unlimited cards are worth a lot. A lot of people want those cards. It's very popular for collectors to collect those cards, and at the same time, they have very low print runs. Especially if you start to think about condition, which is the fourth thing here. For however many, unlimited Birds of Paradise that exist, what percentage of those have a good condition? So it's kind of straightforward. So you want to think about the scarcity of something, and that's a kind of a big reason why I decided to go for foils, because I think foils, um, the old bordered foils, are extremely scarce, especially relative to what the market kind of sees them as. So I think they're like even more scarce than people are giving it credit for. Okay, next is rarity. So rarity, as it's used in this book, is basically talking about the fact that something can't be reprinted, right? So right away with rarity in terms of Magic cards, the reserve list comes to mind. Reserve list says these cards can't be printed. As I've talked about in another video, though, I think there are a lot of cards in Magic that are pseudo-reserved list, so they are effectively like a reserved list card. So, like an Alpha Black Lotus, a Beta Black Lotus, a foil Urza's Legacy. What's a card that can be reprinted? Um, shoot. Wait, Defense of the Heart. Okay, like a foil Urza's Legacy, Defense of the Heart. Even though they can make new Defenses of the Hearts, in a new promo version, a new commander or whatever, you can't have that original printing. So basically, like original printings, um, and reserve list cards. Also, sealed product fits this definition of rarity because you can't make new, let's say, Urza's Legacy boxes. You can't make new Urza's Destiny boxes. So this lines up very well with kind of making an argument for why Magic should act like other collectible markets, and also kind of reminding you what are the things you should be investing in. You should probably be investing in these things that are scarce and rare. So provenance is basically, um, I think it's like making something official. So once an item has entered the secondary market, it has gained provenance. This record serves as a legally verifiable confirmation of an object's ownership history from day one. Oh, okay. So the way they're talking about provenance, it's like who owned it before you. I guess, if you had some kind of like famous Picasso, you would want to know like, okay, it came from this museum, and then it went to this art collector, and then it went to this museum, and then this museum, and then this art collector, and then this art investor, and so on. So you have kind of like a lineage, so you know it's not a fake, right? So again, provenance kind of serves two roles. One, it helps you know something's not a fake, and two, something may become more valuable if someone famous owned it, right? So maybe one day there's a full foil Urza's Legacy set, all BGS 9.5, but LSV owned it. So LSV owned it, and so that makes it even more special because people know, because LSV is like one of the most famous Magic players. Now all of a sudden this thing's worth even more because of provenance. So I don't think we really have that in Magic. We do have, grading. We have BGS and PSA, and so that kind of makes things more official, less likely to be fake. But we don't really have something like that. We don't have like a list of who owned the card beforehand. I guess we've got signings, so like an artist had the card at some point and signed it. So we don't really have provenance. It is interesting though that in the future with NFTs we could potentially have provenance for digital cards. I don't know if that really matters. Like to me that wouldn't matter at all, but who knows. Okay, so condition. I think that's kind of straightforward. We all know how much condition plays a role. And then the last one is history. So this one is, I was like, wow, okay, history. So you can kind of imagine, a Black Lotus will always be worth a lot because it just stands out. It's very historic. It's been traditionally the best card in Magic, quote unquote. And it's been a Power 9. And people have always been so excited about it. It's always going to be a piece of history. Another card is like, Birds of Paradise, right? Like Birds of Paradise is just such an iconic card. Wrath of God, Shivan Dragon. And I've been thinking recently. I've been kind of investing in a lot of the 2000 type era foils, and thinking about what about cards like Anorid Brushhopper, cards like Blazing Spectre. There were cards in history, or even like a Rishadan Port, a Lin Civi Defiant Hero, then there's like the Urza stuff. What was good during Urza's probably like Tolarian Academy. So I think there are like many different periods of Magic where different cards were powerful. There was even a period of time where Aetherworks Marvel was insane, or Stoneforge Mystic, or there's each standard format basically had its own really powerful cards, and I wonder if that matters at all. I don't think it will matter too much. I think like the history kind of gets eaten up by the very first history of Magic, but who knows? Maybe in 10, 15 years will people be excited to, maybe they have really good memories of when they used to play Rebels in Standard or whatever, and so they want to have a Lin Civi, or maybe they have really good memories about how they played Fires of Yavimaya in Standard, so they want to have a foil Fires of Yavimaya. I don't know. it's interesting to think about. But yes, there is. I think it's very clear that there is some advantage to a card having some historic place in Magic's history. Um, Cards that have been banned, definitely, right? Every card that's been banned was very good at some point, and then kind of was forever put into Magic history by being added to the ban list. So that's just another thing to think about. There's definitely a whole nostalgia factor to that. Okay, so then I'll try to quickly go through these extrinsic factors. Supply demand dynamics. So I think like one of the main things for Magic is like, cards can't. It kind of goes with the rarity thing. New booster boxes, old booster boxes are opened. You can't make new ones, so by that supply demand dynamic, the supply is always going down or staying the same. So that's very good for price. And demand may go up or down. It probably would go up because more people would want an old booster box because it's just cooler. The older it gets, the cooler it would be to draft something like that. So globalization. So in the book, it talks about how the fact that the world is becoming more and more connected, that may bring new people. Let's say Magic is just a U.S. phenomenon. It's not really. It is in other countries like Japan. It's pretty big and stuff. But let's say, for example, there's a country like India that no one plays Magic. Now the world becomes more globalized, and now a lot of Indian people are suddenly playing Magic. That could bring in new demand and affect prices. Demographic trends. The way I think about this for Magic is, I think it's very interesting to look at the stuff that people are buying and selling on graded Magic. It's like all ABU stuff. It's like, it's people that have a ton of nostalgia for like the very first sets of Magic, which I find interesting because for me personally, like I'm 31 and I started playing Magic when I was like 8 to 10 years old, and that was kind of like when Invasion came out is when I like started playing Standard, I guess. So to me, like an Icy Manipulator is not nostalgic because I never played with Icy Manipulator. But something like anything from something like a Utopia Tree is like really nostalgic to me because I remember when that card came out, everyone thought it was going to be awesome. Or like a Blazing Spectre or a Fires of Yavimaya or a Spirit Monger, a Pernicious Deed. Like those cards are more nostalgic to me. So I wonder if in the future, and then what happens too is like 30-year-olds have a lot less money than 40-year-olds. Because I think especially like between the 30 to 40 is when you make a lot of your money. So maybe in the future we will have people buying more from that era of Magic that are like my age. Interesting to think about. Media coverage is another one that it talks about in the book. And it's funny, I was watching this video by Rudy today. He's talking about some YouTuber like Mr. Beast I've never heard of, but apparently like a big YouTuber is doing some kind of media stunt for Wizards. So, and I think also maybe there may be like some kind of TV series on Netflix that's like Magic the Gathering related. So these sorts of things can like bring focus to a certain hobby and can increase demand. I think we all saw what happened when Logan Paul started making videos about Pokemon. That really increased the price of Pokemon cards. So something similar could happen for Magic. So that's just kind of my little book report. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.